Some enchanted evening, I did see a stranger.
Fortunately, I met Stan when I was 16, and he's been the light of my life since I was 16, so I was lucky.
After dancing all night, I did take her outside, and I made a pass or two, like most cheeky boys wanting a grab. I got whacked from the trouble.
And what do you love about Nana and Gaga?
I like about Nana and Gaga at their clothes.
And what do you love about Nana and Gaga?
They're beautiful.
They're beautiful.
Hi, I'm Chloe Dewhurst. I am so grateful that you are my great-grandparents. I am grateful that you spoil me from birthdays and Christmas and other times too. I am grateful that you make me laugh. I am very grateful that you love me.
Hi, I'm Hannah Dewhurst. Thank you for your special hugs. Thank you for smiles. Thank you for the yummy chocolates. I'm Noah, and I love you. And Nana and Gaga, you're the best.
I just love you both. I think you model what life should be: positivity, energy, enthusiasm for family.
Your commitment and love for each other is an amazing gift and example for us all, even to the great-grandchildren.
Just, thank you for having such a positive impact on my life. A lot of the attributes that I have as a person come from you because of the time we spent together when I was growing up, and all those effects that you've had on me have been super positive. So, without you there, I could have been a different person, and I just want to thank you for that.
I'd never seen a couple who were so in love and openly in love and would talk about their love with each other.
I love them so much. When I think about them probably nearly every day, I think about their love for each other, their love for us, how they've created this family values kind of vibe where we all just want to spend time together. They've made Christmas this really special event, not because of Christmas itself, but because it's just family.
And I want to thank them for their years of kindness, fun, generosity towards Julia and I. And I hope we have many more years to come like that.
Together they're a very romantic couple. They still adore each other. When I've stayed up here before, I've gone to the bedroom some mornings to see if they're awake or not, and Dad will be holding Mum's hand, and he's done it all their life. He's held Mum's hand in bed all their married life.
I know people don't get on along sometimes with their in-laws, or there's a problem with one or the other. It's never been the case. I just absolutely love them to bits, and I just feel so blessed to have had them in my life.
Mum and Dad, you've always been there for all of us in the family, and I particularly know you've always been there for me. I love you. You've been critical in my life to the sort of person I've grown up to be and who I am now, even though I'm at the age of 68. And I still look forward to the relationship we have in your latter years. So thank you for everything you've done for me. The time, the love, the commitment, and we love you heaps in return.
Anything that Stan enjoyed, I enjoyed, and what I enjoyed, he enjoyed. We had a wonderful life together. Had a wonderful life. Great husband, great children, great grandchildren. What more could a woman want, eh?
The Nichols family came from Cornwall, and mainly from a place called Helston, a town right down the bottom end of Cornwall, facing east to the sea. There are rumours, of course, some came from Devon, a few may have come from York. The Nichols arrived in Australia in 1840. The Nichols all, by the way, initially were farmers. They came out as labourers to the country, and they waited for a square mile allocation of land. and their land was in a place called Nantawarra. They called it the Mallee Vale, and it was one of the best farms going in the district because they always had regular, about 18-inch rainfall. Other Nichols weren't so lucky. They got on the wrong side of the hummocks, as they call it, the range of hills, and they didn't get water regularly. So there was always moving and thronging with the Nichols family. There were about 6 different families up north, about 100 miles north of Adelaide, who were all on the land. And that was pretty great. In 1840, that was a Robert Nichols. I don't know the name of his wife, but he had 4 sons, and one of them was my grandfather. That was James Nichols. And then he had 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. One of them died early in life, so left 3 of them together. Then from that family, James Nichols, which was the eldest son from Robert Nichols, he produced my father, who's Robert Nichols. He was a farmer initially. Dad, in the meantime, was also a horsebreaker. And he used to coin a little phrase: any good horseman would hear the sound of his own horse's hooves as they galloped by in the herd. That's what he reckoned should have happened. Whether that really did, I wouldn't know. Hell's bells. The Nichols, when they came out here, there was a bit of a mixture. We're not too sure that the Nichols mob would have been Church of England, and on my mother's side, of course, there were some Presbyterians from Scotland. So we were a bit mixed up, but when they came to Australia, the only church on top of the hill was a Methodist church. And of course, I went up there a few times and stood with the family. And I was a Methodist, of course, myself as a youngster, and I found out that was the only meeting place the farmers really had. Go to church on Sundays, you wear your best dress, you wear your best handbag, and Dad wear his suit, and that was it. Otherwise you didn't see anybody, because most people didn't have transport. They travelled by horse. He lost his farm after about 7 years through sand-drift and dry. But in the meantime, he'd got very interested in Liberal politics. But the district in South Australia for Parliament was the district of Stanley. They elected 2 members for Parliament. My dad was one of them. So he belonged to the district of Stanley. Then they changed it to Young, just 1 member per electorate. And we're always proud of Dad because he got knighted by the King in 1941 for his service to the community in Parliament. But at any rate, when Dad got into politics, he moved to the city. He moved in the suburbs of Adelaide, called Woodville, and bought a house, and that's when I was born. You know where the name Stanley came from? Well, the district in South Australia for Parliament was the district of Stanley, so he called me Stanley. Dad taught me one mighty lesson as a kid. I had a habit. I wanted remember those little mile-a-metre things you stick on the wheel of your bike? Tells you how many miles you've gone? I wanted one. They were 6 shillings. And Mum had a glass full of coins in the safe. So I pinched them. And I got caught. So first of all, I got marched down into the shed and got a whack for my trouble. And then Dad gave me a nice talk about being polite and nice and doing the right thing. From now on, he said, if ever you do anything wrong, you go straight up and admit that you've done it. And at the same time, make sure you walk tall, head up, shoulders back, and walk like you own the world. That was his first lesson to me. He never whacked me again. I never pinched again. I know he did some naughty things, but nothing like that. And I'd preached that gospel myself all my life. I had one sister who was a school teacher, another sister as a bookkeeper, and my brother, but he was a permanent Navy man. He got to the rank of captain, and we remained in the city. So really, that's in brief the family. Horseback was still going at that time, and on the big Port Road from Adelaide to Port Adelaide, they still had the big old steam trucks. If you rode fast enough, you catch up on your push bike and hang on, which was illegal, but we all did. We had double-decker buses. The double-decker buses, of course, like they had in London, Didn't have a top on them, but you were out in the open. And if you ever played up there, the old conductor would race up to tick you off. So you climb over the top, drop down on the bonnet and slide off. So we were rather little rascals, really, when you come to think of it. We liked playing around.
Well, my mother lived up in the country. She lived in Salisbury. That was the country in Adelaide then. Brought up with a family of 12, I think. And that's enough to make anyone tough. And father was down in the city. I don't remember, Walkerville, I think, was where he came from. My father came from 2 children, 2 boys. Father's side, they were very cold people. And that's why he fell for mother. He was a gentle person. And everybody liked him. He did very well in business, and I couldn't understand it. Mother was rough and tumble with all those brothers and sisters, and he only had a brother, and they were very strict, prim and proper people. And he really fell madly in love with mother, who was tough, hard and horrid, and he was wonderful and sweet. And they just love one another, which is amazing, isn't it? Well, I think it is, anyway. All the other children, there were 2 boys and 2 girls. They were 8.5 years older, so they didn't bother with me much. And Lorna died. Lorna was very sick. She had the asthma. She was out in the cold or something. They said she got very wet one night, sleeping on someone's veranda, got wet, and she got a chill and got a cold, and she was never well after that. She had a terrible cough. And she died when she was very young, 24 I think. Then I came along as a big surprise. Mother was all ready to go on a trip. Father had saved the money to go on a big trip. And I came along, and Father said, we'll get Grandma to look after us, still have that trip we saved for it. No, she wouldn't leave me, so for it all, she blamed me. She didn't ever have a wonderful trip. It was my fault because I was born. I wasn't too young to tell her it was your fault. You did it, I didn't. I did have a good life because I had quite a few years with Father, and thank goodness he talked to me and he told me about life. He gave me a lot of tips about the world and life and how to behave. And you keep it all to yourself and only let out the good bits, keep the nasty bits to yourself. Work on that and you're fine. And he was right. It was an easy way to do it. So I was thankful that the few words I had with my father were wonderful. And I followed what he told me, and I was only 11. And I remembered every word he said. I still think of him. He was wonderful. I've got a picture of him in the hall. Nobody knows, but I have a look at it every now and then. He was a wonderful man. Of course, he died when I was young, and it was very sad because he had leukemia. And I used to listen at doors, and I found out he had 5 years to live, and believe it or not, he lived the 5 years and no more.
It's a real pity that I never met my mum's father, my grandfather, because unfortunately he died of leukemia in his 40s, which was an unusual disease back in that era. However, at the young age of in his 40s, he had amassed a significant business. He was a wealthy man, and he'd all done it through bakery. He had the largest bakery in Adelaide, bakery called Golden Crust Bakery, which he'd run from one shop into a full distribution network and large bakery. And then he then invested in real estate around Adelaide, and he was a property investor. And all the family evolved into that business. And after he died, he did leave the business in trust for the sons and the daughters and for his wife, my grandma, Vida. And it is important to note that the family decided to sell that business to George Weston's Foods, which traded as Tip Top Bakeries. And even today, that is the major bakery in Adelaide, Tip Top Bakeries, which was started off by my grandfather as Golden Crust Bakeries.
I went to primary school for starters for 7 years. I passed my QC. I spent 1 year in high school. I didn't do very well there because I wasn't classified as an A stream bloke. They called me a B stream bloke. A stream was usually the academic potential, B stream was the commercial potential. C and D, well, that's just the also-rans. And I've never met such a rowdy bunch in my life in the classroom. But it was wonderful. The teacher used to play footy with us outside at lunch breaks, so that was really a lesson in itself, getting on with the school teacher and all these fellas who were, including me, a bunch of larrikins. Oh, the one at school we did play a lot, primary school, marbles. The other one at primary school was branders. You ever played branders at school? You have gangs, right? Now the schools in those days had no bitumen laid down, no lawns, just dirt around the buildings. So it was a pretty dusty hole, believe you me. And of course you're in a class, not with 20 kids, you'd have 60 or 70 kids in the one class. How the hell a teacher kept up with those, I have no idea, but they did. But at lunchtime, you played branders. You have a tennis ball, you have gangs, and you fight. If you get hit by the ball, you're out. And you had to go back into some sort of a shed because you're out of the game. And that used to hurt too, because you get a few in the face, you knew all about it. There were very few fights, no kids fought much. It was good fun. I was put in the A stream when I left high school into Prince Alfred College, which was the Methodist private school in Adelaide. It had a number of boys, about 600 when I was there. Only 4 schools in South Australia had cadet corps. Prince Alfred College, St Peter's College, Scotch College and Adelaide High School. No, the only 4 had also had rowing teams too, strange as it may seem. They're all big schools and they're all classified as future academics as opposed to just going into trade. Well, my sports at school were a little limited. I played AFL football, but I was a good ruckman. I was a good goalkeeper. I never got in the top team. I played in what we had at Prince Alfred College, the 4th football team. And I did get my blue, as they call it, in rowing in the school 8. When I was at school, I was very interested in methodical things, and they had a cadet course, so I volunteered straight away when I first joined the school when I was 13. And I went through the NCO class straight away. I wanted to get some sort of recognition of my skills, of course, and get a rating. And I eventually became in time a sergeant major. So any of us, I did all the ordering about getting our 3 companies, 200 in each company. And I loved giving orders, and I had a very loud voice, you know, company! And so I did that very well, that finally, in my last year at school, I got promoted, and nothing was finalised as an acting cadet lieutenant, because normally those positions go to the prefects of the school. The goody good choose, you know, blokes who never make mistakes. Well, I was very friendly with the headmaster's son. He was a bloody larrikin, I was a larrikin, and we never made me prefect, either of us, even though we were the right age. And I stuck in the A stream till I left, but I must admit I didn't matriculate. That word in Australia at that time, you needed matriculation to enter the University of Adelaide.
I went to a nice school, all girls of course, and the nearest school was the Church of England school with nuns, and somehow or other I took to them. And I used to come home, the school was St Peter's Girls Collegiate School, and I'd come home and Mother would say, "Oh, did you talk to Peter today?" And she was always sarcastic about the school. And I said, "Why did you send me there?" Because it was the nearest school. And I said, "Well, I'm glad you did. The nuns were quite nice, and they told me all I want to know about religion." I was a bit of a loner. I used to wander around the yard and look at people and size them up. Don't like her, think she's nice. Or they're stupid, they go around giggling together. Then I found another girl that was like me. I saw her wandering around and she sort of said, "We're wanderers, aren't we? We walk around and don't mix with those other giggling gherkins." And I said, "Yes, they are giggling gherkins. I don't want anything to do with them. They're silly." She said, "No, well, we'll be together. We'll talk." So I started talking to her, and then there was another girl that sidled up and said, "Can I be with your group?" And I said, "There's no group. There's only we two. You can join if you like us." And she said, "What's that?" I said sensible, not giggling, stupid young girls. So the three of us stuck together for as long as I can remember at school. And that was Jill and Helen. So it's unusual, I think, to keep your school friends so long. I think that was probably because I was brought up in a street of all boys and I'd only played with boys. Mother was the most annoyed. I should be playing with dolls, and I left the dolls on the bed and played with the boys with fights. We'd go in the paddock and throw dirt at one another, and oh, lovely life, I loved that. With a street full of boys, no girls, good fun, she couldn't do anything about it. So I think I must have been a tomboy, and I didn't like girls very much, they giggled. I think because my sister used to go to morning communion, and I asked could I go with her. And I met this minister who was great on children, and thankful to him, he was such a kind gentleman. He had a room full of children, because we found out after we went to church at night, he would let us go into the hall and dance. And he'd come in and just say hello, and we'd all want him to stay and dance, but oh no, he had to go home to his wife. As long as we locked up, put the light off and put the key back, we could go on doing it. And we were always careful to do the right thing because this reverend was so good. So then I started going to church on a Sunday morning because he was so nice, and my sister used to come with me. And eventually the whole family became quite religious. They quite intrigued with this nice minister that was so friendly and kind, and so they all turned Church of England and used to come off to church with me.
We were 16 and we agreed to go to the Junior Red Cross Ball in the Adelaide Town Hall in October 41, just turned 16. And this other bloke who I was at school with, also in the Navy with, he said he would bring this girl he's sure I would like. And it turned out to be Nancy. We met outside, walked up with the steps into the town hall, and we danced all night, and we did. I danced with no other girl that night. And then of course I took her outside for a rest, and I made a pass or two, like most cheeky boys wanting a grab. I got whacked from the trouble.
Oh yes, he put his hand around my neck and started to creep to the side, and I just grabbed the hand, threw it away. And I said, I don't want any of that. I didn't know what it was. I didn't expect that because Mother had said nothing. I just went to this dance and there was this fellow. So I threw his hand away and said none of that, and he didn't behave like that again. He was very nice after that. Realised he had a dumb bunny, I think. And I think if it was because of Stan, I knew everything. My mother didn't tell me anything. I was sent out in the world dumb. Thankful to Stan, he started to teach me. Shocked that I didn't even know a single swear word. And it was just as well it was someone nice like Stan, or I could have been led astray. So I think at 16 that was good, meeting Stan.
And eventually, of course, I developed a nice three-person song, or three-song person, to demonstrate my zeal in getting a girlfriend. And I've sung this every year for quite a number of years now, every one of our anniversaries. So I will sing it to you. There are three songs: Some Enchanted Evening, I Danced All Night, and I Love You and Don't You Forget It. These are the three songs, so I hope you enjoy them. Some enchanted evening, I did see a stranger and met my darling Nancy at the Adelaide Red Cross Ball. So we danced all night, we danced so tight, and left for a rest outside. And I made a pass which made her gasp and made her bloody wild. So she gave me a whack and said, enough of that, and we loved each other evermore. And we got married 5 years later, 21 years of age. So I love you and don't you forget it. I never, never, never did regret it. I love me too and you won't regret it, Nancy. And we've been married ever since for the last 70 years.
And we stuck together for quite a while, and then he went into the Navy and was my war hero.
But I wanted to go to the war, do my bit. And unfortunately, to go in the army, it would have taken well over a year. So I decided to pick the Navy, because the Navy is fast. You do 3 months at the Flinders Naval Depot for training, and straight after that, you finish your training at sea. I joined the officers' training school, and you're allowed 3 commander's reports if you get into trouble. And being a bit of a larrikin, I found it a bit hard to take some of their, what I call, ridiculous decisions. At any rate, I got caught wearing khaki socks with a blue uniform on a Sunday parade when we'd been fighting the bushfires the day before, and asked the reason why we're wearing khaki socks. And I answered him, I said, well, when I came into the officers' training school, I was issued with 2 socks, 2 pairs of socks, 2 underpants, 2 shorts, 2 shirts, 2 caps. We fought the bushfires on Saturday. We got absolutely smelly and stinky, so I wore khaki socks. Went down like a lead balloon. Didn't make any difference. I should have washed them and dried them out that night. That was my first commander's report. The second commander's report was some lousy cow in Melbourne on a weekend leave reported me for not saluting an officer. Now, I love saluting officers because they don't want to be saluted. They've got to return your bloody salute. So I saluted every officer I did. I've even walked across the other path to make sure I saluted some of them. I enjoyed it. And the third one was a chief petty officer. They got him back from Tasmania, believe it or not, a very old bloke. And you'd have to remember that Flinders Naval Depot was built on cinders from the gasworks. And I heard this crunch, crunch, crunch. He was trying to step on clods of grass, trying to miss the grass, but he missed because it was 10 o'clock at night. So I heard this, got out of my hammock, stuck my head out, I saw who it was. Unfortunately, he saw me too. I don't know if he heard me and remembered me. I blasted him off for being a bloody snoop. Well, that went down like a lead balloon too, but it didn't get me kicked out. However, on the final day for all the blokes out of the 20 guys, 4 of us didn't make it. One was a petty officer before. They confirmed his rank as a petty officer. The other 3, I know their names, but he said, Nichols, Urquhart and Scully, you're on draft 0600 tomorrow morning. And I said, pardon me, sir, would you please explain why we didn't make it? Because we all know we passed the exams. And all he said, Nichols, Urquhart and Scully, you're on draft 0600 tomorrow morning. And that's how it was. So I left the depot a bit pissed off with this basic attitude. So you might say that was the start of my naval career. Then I went north to Milne Bay, picked up the HMAS Shropshire, a heavy cruiser, and that's where I started on board the ship in various ranks on board ship.
And all the time he said, don't you hang around for me, I'll be having a good time with the boys, you go out and have a good time. Which I went out with the boys, but I always kept thinking of Stan, he was the best.
Well, when I joined the Navy, I said to Nance, we've been going together for a couple of years, that we can't keep this up for the next 1, 2 or 3 years. You don't know how long it might last.
Voluntary aid, yes, VAD. I had a uniform and I used to go into Red Cross House. Vivian and I used to go there. I enjoyed them because I had so many things that we were involved with. That was one of them, was open house, where we sort of made it a house for all the sailors and soldiers that came. And there was a different job you had each night. One night you were standing behind the counter taking their coats. Another night you're in the dance room dancing with them with records, dancing with the soldiers and sailors. And the other time you're up in the dining room serving them food. And it was rather fun really, and you mustn't leave with them. But it didn't stop us making appointments to see them the next day, and they used to come down to our beach shack. So what was hard work, people thought, was really quite good fun. And there were the nice American people that gave us lovely presents just to take them down to the beach and show them around Adelaide. They were quite good years.
I was an ordinary seaman, able seaman, and I had 3 special jobs. I was made commander's runner, a plum job, believe you me. You might have to run around behind the commander all day and get him things, get people, but it was a very tolerable and very nice job. Then I went back to part a ship for a month or two. Then I got made the navigator's yeoman, where I did his chart corrections, because I'd done navigation in the officers' training school. And then I also became, after my 6 months, only allowed 6 months, I then made the meteorologist yeoman, where I did his weather charts for him, collected all the information, he made the forecast. This is back in 1944. One time I really got frightened. My action station was on the starboard side of the bridge. I was navigator's yeoman, and the kamikazes had been attacking the whole fleet. And this day, one came straight in on the port side, very low over the water. And the captain said, "Clear the bridge." I didn't hear him. And when I looked to the port side and suddenly found there's no one on the bridge except me, I saw this plane coming in. His wing went straight over the top of the Oerlikon machine gun and B turret. His wing dipped between the bridge and the back of the turret. I saw the pilot with his white band round his head, his face very clear. Well, then it was, I can't remember now. It went into the sea. In my horrible fear, I ducked down behind the steel decking of the bridge. And when I squatted down, what I didn't know, that I'd wet myself. And it wasn't until the gunnery officer came back up top later and said, "Nichols, get up and man your post." "Yes, sir." And about half an hour later, I smelt urine. Thank God I'd only piddled myself. It had run down my leg, and I was in that for another 2 days. This is one of the longest days I'd ever spent on the bridge, 76 hours without going off the bridge. We were so closed up with air attacks. So it was really a frightening few days with kamikaze attack over the whole fleet.
I remember when the end of his time in the Shropshire came, he was offered a marvellous trip to the UK to remain in Shropshire as part of a victory cruise. A chance in a lifetime. But despite the fact he loved the Navy, I think he loved Nancy more, so he gave up the cruise, got married, and look at the result.
In fact, I have to admit, I couldn't get out fast enough. So they offered them, if I wanted to cruise back to London for a big parade at the end of the war, I'd have to sign on for 2 more years. Well, that went down like a lead balloon, and I took no interest in that whatsoever.
Well, first of all, though, he came home and said, "I hear you're going out with someone." I said, "You told me to." He said, "But not the same person." I said, "Well, he was at the university and asked me to all the nice things, so I naturally went to the nice things, but I didn't like him." So he said, "Oh, well, that's all right then."
My first proposal to Nancy was on a double-decker bus on the Port Road when we left Woodville, where I lived, to go to Adelaide, to go up to Nancy's place at what was called Fitzroy in Adelaide. And she knocked me back. I said, "Will you marry me?" "No, I need a proper proposal."
We're sitting at the top of the bus with his sister, with a friend sitting behind, and he leant forward and he said, "Marry me." I said, "What?" He said, "Marry me." I said, "No, thank you. You've got to do it properly. That's not nice on the top of a bus. Marry me, no."
So I had to wait for a couple of days, and Nancy was in their den with her mum and sister.
So he waited until when we got home to my place. There were a crowd of young people there. We were having drinks before we went off to a dance. So he came racing across, got down on one knee and said, "Marry me?"
And I had to kneel down in front of about half a dozen people and say properly, "Would you please marry me?" To which she said yes. And her sister nearly went berserk with happiness. She started to cry, thinking how marvellous it was.
And my sister was sitting next to me and she's saying, "Oh, isn't it romantic?" And I'm saying, "Get up, Stan, get up, shut up, get up." So he said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, marry, yeah, get up."
So we got engaged and got married at 21.